almost time to back to school for my daughter tomorrow. She's going to a new school. So we're excited about that, but a little also apprehensive because she's going to school with her bestie from daycare, and they are thick as thieves, and when they get together it's just them two and no one else. So I'm just like, I'm hoping that things work out for the best, and I'm going to pray for her teacher. She's going to Catholic school, so there's probably going to be a lot of prayers. Charlie's probably going to have to do a lot of Hail Marys.
Yes, I went to Catholic school. It's a lot of exercise, a lot of arm work, a lot of kneeling, genuflecting, the Pentateuch.
Charlie's going to be doing a lot.
All that. Yes, I'm sure she'll. Oh, does she have a cute little uniform?
No, not this year. Because she's in pre-K 4. They just say that they can wear their PE uniforms the whole time. So she just has like a button-up t-shirt, sweats, a button-up t-shirt, and gym shorts, and that's it. Next year, I think they start wearing like the real uniforms. And I don't think she can ever wear pants. I think the girls have to wear dresses.
Yeah, you do.
And so this is going to be...
The only time we could wear pants was when we were walking to school. And we had the pants on under our skirts, and then as soon as we got in, the nuns were like, what is going on?
Yeah,
but you can't wear pants. You can wear shorts under your skirt, but that's it. No pants.
So this is going to be good. I think it's going to be good for her for a multitude of reasons. One, we're a spiritual household, but we're not like a deeply religious household. So we're not like, I mean, Charlie, we read the Bible to Charlie as a bedtime story. She has a child Bible, a children's Bible, and so she likes to hear stories from that. So she knows stuff. Like we were going to, we went to the Renaissance Festival yesterday in Maryland.
Right.
Yes. It was cute. So it's in Davidson. It's like Davidsonville, Crownsville. So we were getting off at the Davidsonville exit. And Charlie said, what is that? And it was like Davidsonville. She's like, oh, like Davidson Goliath. And we were like, it's David and Goliath, not Davidson.
I love the connection, though.
Right.
Love it.
So that was hilarious. But yeah, so today I just have a lot of like last minute running around to do for her. Just things that I forgot. And like things that I didn't want to get until we were as close to school as possible. Like she wants sandwiches for school. She asked for Wawa sandwiches. So she's like, can I take Wawa sandwiches for lunch? Yes, I feed my child Wawa sandwiches. Judge
Wawa
your mother.
sandwiches are the bomb.
They are the bomb. Judge your mama, not me. Okay.
The truth. Pennsylvania.
It's better than.
They start in Pennsylvania, right?
Yes. And they're better than them Subway sandwiches. Okay. Wawa sandwiches are the truth. And so I was like, okay, you could take Wawa sandwiches. Fabulous. They are. But her Wawa sandwiches are going to be homemade. So, and I got the little sandwich cutters and stuff. So I didn't want to buy like the lunch meat too far in advance.
Yeah.
So I'm buying it now. I have some things.
That's cute. Her little
lunchbox.
Lunchbox.
Yeah, she has a lunch bag that matches her book bag. They're lunch bags though. They're more fancy. They have like bento boxes now. Yeah, bento boxes,
I just
all
thought
that.
Was just for the adults.
No, they are for the kids. Yes, and they're cute. Like hers matches her book bag. She has to so she has a bento box, so like a thermos to keep her food hot in that matches the bento box. Like we are.
Wow,
like,
that's fancy.
On it.
We've come a long way from paper bags.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Cause yes, we have. So, we have a lot to cover today. I tried to come up with a catchy title because I saw that you left it as trigger ... And then I know we talked about Jhené Aiko's song and then the line, trigger. You motherfucking right, I'm triggered.
Yes.
But then I remember I had a Fiona Apple stage. I used to there was this her one album I used to listen to.
Her? I love her.
I think she's still around, but just not as, and I was like hyper focused on this one album, and I can't remember what the album's name is. Don't judge me. I know Limp is on there. That's the song, and Limp in the song, she says, "You fondle my trigger, then you blame my gun," and so that is what I named this episode because a lot of us have triggers. Yes, and some of our triggers are pulled by us. Like, but sometimes triggers are we do it to ourselves. But there are a lot of times that people know our triggers, and they go ahead and then pull it. They fondle the trigger, and then when they get shot, then they want to blame us. But you did this. So that is what it is today. All about triggers. So you might be triggered by some of these conversations, but
forewarning.
But let's go ahead and get into the tea of the day. We are not tea experts. Talk to your doctor when drinking herbal tea because there are potential side effects. If they're mixed with some medications, this is not a substitute for medication. We're not affiliated with any of these companies, nor are these endorsements. So what is the tea on the table?
So I'm just going to go over a couple real quick, but I thought about getting a collection of calming teas because we know with the triggers that can cause anxiety. So we just wanted to kind of give some ideas of something to calm your spirit throughout the day. Allegro Relaxing Chamomile combines chamomile and berries and helps reduce physical symptoms of anxiety. Helps with your adrenal glands and stuff like that and long-term stress. Traditional medicinal cup of calm. And the secret of this one is passion flower, which is shown to soothe anxiety symptoms. And then there's the Republic of Tea. It's called Get Relaxed. It's perfect for sipping throughout the day, feel mellow and chill. It's not, anything to kind of ramp you up caffeine-wise. It's a strong taste of lavender and rose. So if you're not into that, you might not really care for it because some folks don't like the extra flowery taste. And then there's Puka. I like Puka. This tea is super soothing. It kind of gives you, it's called Relax Tea. It's not really therapeutic per se, but it kind of gives you a little spot of zen in your hectic day. And then the last one, which I think I know a lot of people always hear about, is Yogi Calming Tea. It's fairly sweet, which is the effect of the licorice. Kind of herby and a floral undertone. And it's a calm and good type of feeling after you, kind of gives you the idea after you left a yoga session. So those are the suggestions. And they will be on the website that I am updating. So you can check them out.
Yes. I like all those teas. So definitely because, we can sometimes get anxiety from being triggered. Yes. I know, a lot of us, those of us who suffer from anxiety, sometimes our anxiety, that is the only way that it comes, is if it's attached to a trigger. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But so let's go for some hot tea. So I don't have a lot. Hold on one second. Let me I'm trying to figure out how to go about this because every time we have a hot tea and I say I don't have a lot, we always wind up going deep into it. So I'm trying to pick which one. Right. So, okay. So first, Beyonce, Release Your Hold on Me. It is now 765 days since you've released Renaissance. And I am still listening to this like it was yesterday. She released this album on July 29th. It is the year of our Lord 2022, August the 29th. A whole ass month.
Well, you're enjoying it, correct?
Yes, and Charlie is too. And I have to make sure that when we listen to it and she's in the car, we are listening to the clean version. Because I definitely don't want her to be saying some of the things that Beyonce is singing. Because her favorite song right now is Heated.
Oh.
And Charlie really enjoys Heated. She likes Church Girl, but I'm like, don't tell your daddy that. Don't tell your daddy you like Church Girl.
She's going to be sitting in pre-K with her best friend sitting there next to him singing, and the teacher going to be like,
don't go to school singing Church Girl. It's not that kind of church song. Even though the Clark sisters are sampled, we're not, no. But I will say this. So I'm going to say this. I do appreciate, I know a lot of people, Beyonce is getting a lot of slack for Church Girl. But I will say this. I thoroughly enjoy Church Girl for two reasons. It's just a catchy song. But also because it helps bring me back to the Clark sisters. And I remember this song vividly. So that's why when Church Girl dropped, I was like, that sounds like the Clark sisters. Center of Thy, I think it's called, I always get it wrong. It's either Center of Thy Will or Center Thy Will, but I think it's Center of Thy Will. But whatever. That song is beautiful. If you don't know the Clark sister story, if you haven't, been heavily ingrained in gospel music, that's okay. But the Clark sisters, the Clark sisters, they have a very interesting story, and they had a Lifetime story on them, which actually was better than what I thought it was going to be. And you should just, it's very fascinating, especially for them to be in gospel. It's very fascinating. So that's that. House of the Dragon. So I had vowed, and I almost wish we were doing this. Were we doing this podcast when Game of Thrones the last season aired? No, we were not.
So, no.
It's been a while, but it has not been that long. Okay,
Right.
so when Game of Thrones the last season hit, I want to tell you, season 8 is the bane of my existence. I hate season 8. I hate season 8
Everybody
8
does.
for so
They ended it in
many
a booty.
reasons. I hated season 8. There were now don't get me wrong, there were very good episodes of season 8. Well, episodes with very good scenes, but I don't like the way they reduced Arya and Daenerys to just like crazy women. Daenerys became crazy, right? Just out of her mind, out of control, which anytime we see a woman in power, that's what they try to reduce us to. You built her up to be, she went from being submissive and like taken advantage of and abused to being like that bitch. And then you just turn her into just like this woman who's on a power trip and went absolutely bonkers. And I did not like that. And the same thing for Arya. Like, why would you build us up to know that Arya's about to be a killer assassin? That was the baddest bitch in all of Westeros. This bitch was changing her faces.
Girl.
And y'all had her be like, which is understandable, you just reduced her back to a little kid. And I'm like, well, why did you make her grow up just to revert her back to like a scared little girl? Like, that was just like annoying as hell. How Cersei died was just trash. Like, there was so many trash moments, but nothing was more trash. And this is a spoiler alert if you've never watched Game of Thrones, but it's been like years. So what were you doing? Bran as the king of the North. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Bran. Why?
Why are you king of the North?
That was even over Sansa. That's a bitch ass move. I did not like it. So I say all that to say, when it circles back around to the House of the Dragons, I was not going to watch it. I had refused to watch it. And then when Warner Brothers and HBO Max merged and all that stuff, I was like, I'm definitely not doing this because I don't like what Warner Brothers is doing, but that's a whole nother story. So I was like, no. And then what happened?
You watched it.
I watched it. And then what happened? A bitch is hooked.
Yeah.
I am hooked. But I will tell you, it is, if you're not into gratuitous violence, if you're not into gratuitous sex scenes,
but that's kind of Game of Thrones.
this ain't gonna be
MO.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah, but they put everything that you saw in Game of Thrones over the season and they jam-packed that into one episode. And I was like, wow, you really went there. Like, whoa. It's this one scene that my sister and I, she sent me a text. She's like, yeah, you didn't really prepare me for that. I was like, I did not. All I have to say is Roe v. Wade. In the time of Roe v. Wade, this scene was so pivotal and so like scary that you know that this is something that is going to happen at some point. We are in these days, and it's just like I don't understand. I don't get it. So I'll just say that I'll go further. I saw a C-section with no anesthesia. So let's just let that marinate, okay? Because it was, are you going to save the mother or the child? And there's like, oh yeah, we're definitely saving the child.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
I love her, but
mother.
we got to save the child. I need an heir.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's pretty much.
sorry
how they
for
roll.
you.
I can get another wife.
I can get another wife.
I'm gonna just take this kid and be out. Yeah, that's why
So
it's those medieval. What do you call them? Time? I don't even know what times those were. Barbaric.
fake
Bar-
times.
yeah,
They're fake times.
that are
They're not
mirroring.
real.
I know, but they're mirroring other stuff.
Well, they said it's like 145 AD
Oh,
or
okay,
something
yeah.
like that.
Mm,
So this is a prequel to Game of Thrones. It's set like
right.
172 years before Daenerys Targaryen
Mhm.
came onto the scene. So and that's another thing, like I didn't want it to be like, I wanted it to be closer, like whatever spin-off they did, I kind of wanted to be
Ah,
closer
yeah.
to the Game of Thrones
Yeah.
time. Like
Yeah.
I thought I'd have loved to see the early Ned Stark and early Robert
Yeah.
Baratheon like
Mm.
storyline play out, like, and how like his sister chucked the deuces up to Robert Baratheon. Was it? I think she
Baratheon.
was supposed to get married to Robert
Mhm.
Baratheon and was like, "Nah, I'm going with the Targaryen clique,"
Yup.
and
I'm gonna
that's how
roll out.
John was formed, right?
Jon
So
Snow.
I would have liked to see that story play out a little
Yeah.
bit, but and I didn't think that the House of Dragons was going to capture me, but they did incorporate A Song of Wind and Fire, if you've read the
Mm.
books, into this. So it
Mhm.
does connect Game of Thrones to this.
To
And the
it.
way that
Okay.
it's connecting it is, I think, is going to be very interesting. So that's
Mm.
that. And the last thing is, I'm into like murder podcasts, true crime podcasts now. Like I
Uh-huh.
can't get enough of them. Um, and just I think so it birthed out of, and this is a show I'm recommending for everybody, Only Murders in the Building. So Only
Oh
Murders in the
yeah.
Building's on Hulu. It's 2 seasons. It's
Mhm.
Selena Gomez, Martin Short, and
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin. And it is very cute, very hilarious, very short episodes, but it will grab your attention all the way through. They just ended season 2.
Mhm.
So it is definitely something that you should get into. 10 episodes each season. It's cute. So go ahead and watch that. And that's it for me with the hot tea.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're gonna jump right into our tea time segment. And we're back. And we're back. We're having another discussion of sorts. So, as we said, the topic is trigger. You fondle my trigger, then you blame my gun, as Zarifa so eloquently put earlier. So, what triggers us? You know, what do we think of it? What's the word? What do we understand it to be? It refers to the experience of having an emotional reaction to a disturbing topic such as violence or the mention of suicide in the media or a social setting. However, there is a difference between being triggered and being uncomfortable. Feeling triggered isn't just about something rubbing you the wrong way. For someone with a history of trauma, being around anything that reminds them of that situation, of it being traumatic, makes them feel like they're experiencing it all over again and reliving it all over again, which is a lot of times why folks don't want to recount traumatic experiences because they have to live through it every single time. So a lot of times when people say, you know, why didn't you tell me this happened? Because folks don't want to really relive it, and
Right.
it can cause a lasting impression for you, that you
Right.
continuously have to deal with. But there
Right.
are different,
And
you
like
know.
and you're right when and it's important to point out, because you mentioned this earlier, that is a difference between being triggered and being uncomfortable. But even in that, there are different types of triggers. Not all triggers are bad, so we want to
Right.
put that out there. Some triggers are definitely, there are good triggers, but for the most part, we always tend to focus on the negative triggers, and so that's
Mhm.
where our conversation is centered today, on just some of those triggers that leave you with a feeling that is not happy and cozy and, warm and fuzzy.
Mhm.
So triggers can be internal and external, and they can vary from person to person. Not all, like we said, not all triggers are bad. There could be happy memories and experiences. You could smell a scent that your grandmother wore, and it brings back, you know, visions of, you know, being on your grandmother's lap while you're watching TV, or her braiding your hair, or whatever. So there are some internal triggers, and these are the things that come from within. It can be a memory, a physical sensation, or emotion. These are anger, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, vulnerable, abandoned, or out of control. Internal triggers can lead to loneliness, muscle tension, memories tied to a traumatic event, and pain. So what about external triggers? So external triggers are those things that come from a person's environment, right? So they can be a person, place, or specific situation. Sometimes deja vu, we are learning now, are triggers. Like there's something about the situation that you're in that's bringing back a memory, but it can't come fully to the surface. What may be normal everyday situations or minor inconveniences for some may be triggering to someone living with, you know, may just be triggering to someone. Like, for example, I was watching this TikTok where this girl who suffers from anxiety, her anxiety got triggered when she was at the DMV. Why? Because it was the physical environment. It was the loud noises. The loud noises. And she never said what it was being a trigger for. Like, did something happen to her in her life and that involved a lot of loud noises? But whatever, that environment was just too much for her. Her palms started sweating. She was just like very twitchy, very nervous, very like on edge. So a person that could be living with trauma can be triggered by a movie, a television show, a news article that reminds them of the experience. Maybe a person connected to the experience, right? Maybe you're somewhere, maybe you got physically assaulted, right? Let's say, and it doesn't even have to be sexually assaulted. Maybe you were at college and you got jumped by a bunch of girls, right? Your first day on campus. And you wind up trying to stay at the school, you leave, you get to be older, you go to a different college, you're thinking you're fine. You walk into Starbucks, and the girl that instituted that entire fiasco is the barista. I'm going to put that bitch in a barista mode because she jumped you.
Right.
And you go and you see her, and you're just instantly triggered.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize that you were still carrying that from like 10, 20 years ago, right? Certain sounds that could remind you of the experiences, changes to relationships or ending of a relationship, smells associated with the experience, such as smoke. So maybe you were in a fire when you were younger and you got out, but maybe you lost a family member in there, or a pet. And every time you smell smoke, it instantly triggers you back to that. I've seen rape survivors talk about the fact that they would smell smoke, and it reminded them of the breath of the person who raped them because that person smoked cigarettes. Like things like that, just like trigger. A woman I watched, this woman could not go into, like when they used to allow you to smoke in bars, she literally could not go into a bar because of the smell of the smoke, because it just was an automatic trigger. There's this woman who refuses to drink rum because the person who raped her had the smell of alcohol, and it was rum. And anytime, like, the smell of rum will instantly make her vomit. Like, she cannot be around it. It brings it back to surface so many times. So we have to understand and understand that sometimes we have these internal and external triggers. Some of us don't even know it. So maybe if you have a friend or a family member who you see every time you get into certain situations with them, they react a certain way. Maybe take a step back and try to think if maybe something in that environment is triggering to them.
So true. And then we kind of have to look at, well, how are these triggers formed? You know, some researchers believe the brain stores traumatic situations differently from non-traumatic memories, the way your brain compartmentalizes certain things. And it can cause, of course, the emotional reaction. Zarifa just made a really good example about, you know, if some people become about the correlation with the rum and a rape victim. And also, for example, a person recovering from alcohol use disorder might associate a particular activity with drinking, so they do not participate and come out because it's too much, and they know they're going to go into a certain state. And triggers also start the fight or flight response. You know, your brain might interpret it as a current event, as something that happened in the past that Zarifa just kind of talked about, and your body just cannot react like that young lady who would get sick because of what was happening, and it just causes her body just automatically reacts beyond her what her brain may say or what she thinks is going on. And then and your body really can experience like what was happening at that moment during that traumatic experience for some, and it just throws people into a tailspin. And just trying to be mindful of how impactful triggers can be. There's the sensory angle that Zarifa alluded to earlier, with the taste, touch, and sound and smell, and all of those things really can kind of embed in your life without you even realizing it. You
Mhm.
know, um, I think so. For me, some of my over the years, you kind of figure out what triggers you to a certain point.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so being transparent, a couple weeks ago, I was watching LA's Finest, and there's a lot of talk about, I forget who was trying to have a kid, or someone had a kid or didn't have a kid. I don't remember. The partner's wife had a child or something, and they had had several miscarriages and IVF challenges and all that stuff. And listening to it, and I haven't really been triggered by this in a long time because I can't have children. And when I was watching it, all of a sudden I was on the couch and I just started like crying, not crying and crying. I was crying for like 3 hours, and in the bed, like next day I couldn't do anything, and I had to sit there and figure out what is going on, and it was because of the baby thing, and I
Mhm.
didn't realize it had affected me, or I mean it still affects me, but I didn't realize, because my husband was like, it was like that soul crushing,
Right.
crying, sobbing, and I couldn't
Mhm.
communicate to him. He didn't know what was wrong. He thought I got a phone call and bad news, but I was not in a state to even conceptualize what was going on. But that was a huge trigger for me that I haven't been
Mhm.
triggered in years. But it really kind of put me in a mental space that I was not, it wasn't good. But I
Right.
eventually, had to walk through it. But it can pop up when you least expect it.
Right. For me, my triggers tend to come with scents and sounds. More
Mhm.
so like if I hear a song, certain
Yeah,
songs take me
music.
back to certain places, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. There
Mhm.
are scents that I just cannot, I have like a negative reaction to. Like
Mhm.
I smell it and I'm like, absolutely not. So for me, I don't know when the last time I have been triggered. I'm not gonna say it wasn't like years and years ago, but it hasn't been recent enough
Mhm.
for me to remember, but it recent enough to know that it has happened. Um,
Right.
I think sometimes for me, my triggers tend to come from like what I've learned is I used to allow people to trigger me, right? The whole fondle my trigger and then you blame my gun. I used to
Right.
let
Mhm.
people trigger me, meaning I would give a piece of information about myself to somebody and then they would use it against me. And then that would trigger those negative emotions from that, right? But I stopped letting people do that because I realized, and not everybody can come to this realization. It takes a lot of work, and I'm not saying that it doesn't still, like, there aren't times where I'm not still triggered by something somebody does or says. But what I realize is when people intentionally trigger you, it's really about them feeling bad about themselves. And so they want you to feel exactly what they're feeling in that moment. And generally, what that is them triggering you. So they'll
Yeah.
know something. So if you are someone who has struggled with your weight and
Mm.
you are very self conscious about your weight, and you tell somebody that, and they're feeling shitty about themselves, and you're at a meal with them, and they say something like, "Oh, so you talk about your weight every day, but you want to sit here and eat this whole bowl of pasta?"
Mm.
For some people, that could be very triggering, right?
Right.
But that person in that moment is doing that because they feel shitty about themselves. It's not about you. It's about the way they feel about them. And then that in turn will cause you to feel worse about yourself. And then they see that they've made you feel bad. So then they feel better because they feel like, okay, now somebody else feels exactly like I do. And I don't play them games. Right. I don't play them games. You want to be miserable? Then be miserable in your own shit. You're not bringing me with you. Absolutely not. Absolutely you will not. Because I'm quick. You say something like, that's why, and I'm like, your mama.
Your mama.
Like, I'm the type of person now, I don't do it, but if I see that you're intentionally effing with me, I will go to the gutter. I am not Michelle Obama, okay? I do not go high when y'all go low. I go to the fucking basement, okay? I will go to the basement on your ass, okay? I'm underground like a mole, okay? I'm in hell. You go low, I'm going to hell. That's where we at with it, okay?
Gotta help you for real after that.
So, you know, but while we're talking about this, right, there is a larger conversation that needs to be had, and that's with black people. Like, black people have another level of trauma that they have to deal with that is different from a lot of our counterparts, right? So our trauma is mainly deep rooted in racial, like,
racism
shit. And racial trauma.
Racial trauma.
Our triggers are literally in racial trauma, right? You're constantly being exposed to racial stressors, racism, racial bias, whether implicit or explicit, systemic discrimination, microaggression, violence against people of color, police brutality. You know, you see these things consistently. And I'm going to tell you, when I realized that we were collectively triggered, and nobody checked on us to see how we were doing when that George Floyd shit hit.
Ooh, girl.
Nobody could because here's the thing, black people knew that this happened every day, all day. This is not something that we were unaware of. And be clear, prior to this, we saw a lot of things, right? We saw Sandra Bland, and we saw I always miss his name, the guy in Minnesota, Castile, Philando. Yeah, we saw the video footage, right? But we didn't really see everything that transpired. Right. This was the first time we literally saw a man's life being taken from him. And it was just like, wow. Now, if you're old enough, like us, there was another situation that happened years ago, which was the Rodney King.
Yep. In LA.
Right? And we saw the video of these cops literally beating this black man to a pulp, which then led to those LA riots, and it was just crazy. Now, this is 94.
Were we in high school?
92 maybe. It was 92. It was in the 90s. And yeah, because I know by that OJ had already passed. I mean, OJ didn't happen yet. So OJ was coming up. Okay. That Rodney King had happened, OJ was coming up. Because OJ happened 94-ish. Right. 93, 94. I was still
at home watching the chase, the Bronco.
Yeah, 95. Because I remember somebody coming up to me when we were on campus. It's like, he was found innocent. And I was like, so? Like, at that, because I was like, I know I was able to weed through the hype. That man did it.
That was another racially traumatizing situation because the country was divided.
Very much so.
On multiple levels, and you could tell it was the white people on one side for sure,
and the black people, yes,
and the black people on the other side. That alone,
right? And here's the thing: I don't care what a person did, right? Because I hate when people say, "Well, he shouldn't have been running. He shouldn't have been doing this." But it is like Natalie said earlier, it is a flight or fight response. Yes. You are triggered by seeing these images on television, And then when you get into those situations,
you think it's going to happen to you.
it's fight or flight because you are triggered by what you've seen before. Now you see a police officer, so it's almost automatic. You can't stop it. And I don't want to hear this excuse when there are mass shooters who literally can walk out of a building with an AR rifle and nothing happens to them.
Taken from Burger King after they killed 9 people in a church.
Miss me with that.
But the man getting out of his car or truck, sitting in his car, gets shot because of what? Like
right. I've seen videos where there are men, white men, sitting with an automatic rifle in their lap, in their truck, pointing it at officers, and they do nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Other than, sir, calm down. Sir, calm down. Really?
This man comes out of a store with, we don't know if the whole counterfeit bill story. Over a counterfeit bill, this man has lost his life. When there are people out here who have shot and killed children.
Yes.
Children.
Walk away.
Children. That's the last time I was triggered. Uvalde. Yeah. That's when I was triggered. Yeah. That's the last time. And I was triggered in a way I didn't realize because for us, it was for us, it was Columbine first.
Yes, definitely.
And seeing that and those children being still close to our age because we were in college, but they were in high school. Yeah. Like still being in that same, seeing that on TV live.
Zarefa and I were roommates.
We were living together.
And we were on the couch like, what the hell is
And you have to understand, at that time, we were getting things live. So we were watching Columbine unfold live. These weren't videos that were taken and put on. This was happening live. Then we have, so that was a trigger for me because then right before the Uvalde was the grocery store shooting. So we're just saying, like, black people tend to have a lot of just their layers. And then when you talk about black people, then you have to go down even further. Black women get triggered. Very, very. Y'all trigger us daily. Y'all trigger us daily.
Like every other second sometimes.
Yes. It's subtle comments, right? It's at every turn. It's responses that you may get. The constant struggle that makes you believe you have to always be more and better. Yes. You have to achieve more. You have to achieve better. You look around at your counterparts who are doing like nothing.
And they are excelling or put in positions to excel. And you sitting here like.
And it's not the same. You're not getting measured the same. No. And those things constantly trigger us because they remind us that we're black, and they remind us that we're women, right? And then the strong black woman stereotype, right? Because we're always seen as so strong, we tend to be the least considerate, lowest paid, right? So then we get triggered because something happens and it's just like, I don't know how to respond because if I respond this way, you're going to think I'm this. If I respond that way. So now you have to deal with all of this emotional distress and then you don't know where to do with it. Right. So then what do you become a strong black woman because you don't have a choice.
And then you're criticized for it.
Right. And then it becomes physical wear and tear. I'm going to say something. I can't say that. But I'll say this. Because I was about to say something, but I can't say that. Because if I say something, I'm going to put somebody on blast. And I can't do that. So I'll say this. I will say that the narrative that black women tend to be heavier, more unhealthy, more overweight than any other race. There's truth to that. But the truth is built into triggers. The truth is built into these racial traumas and racial biases that you put us in. Of course, I could be a size 2 thin model if I didn't have a household to run. I didn't have to be better than everybody else. I didn't feel like I had to be better than anybody else. I didn't have to worry about what you're going to think about my hair when I come in, or if because of the way I'm shaped, you're going to tell me that I'm dressed too sexy. There's some women, I'm sorry, that there's nothing that they can do that is going to minimize their body shape so that it can be comfortable for you. There is something, unless they walk into school with a muumuu, or walk into a workplace with a muumuu, there's some women, black women, that have these shapes and there's nothing that they can do. Okay? But I do believe that, yes, we tend to be a little bit heavier because we're carrying so much.
And sicker
Yes.
because we internalize
So
it.
we internalize everything, and then what happens? We live in food deserts, so we don't get the opportunity to eat healthy organic meals. Everybody don't have a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or Wegmans in their area.
Mm.
You understand what I'm
And
saying?
it's more.
Some of these
it's cheaper to
stores,
buy the fast food, which is bad for you.
hello, I saw this TikTok that was like, yeah, we have a grocery store here, but guess what? They don't offer us organic options. They offer us whatever they can get.
Right.
Because you have to understand.
Those food
Well,
insecurities are real.
It is. And I'm just letting y'all know that. You can't, yeah, black women sometimes can tend to be a little, let's just be clear. We carry all
A
of this
lot.
shit emotionally and physically. It takes a toll on us.
Yeah.
A physical wear and tear on our body.
The
But
intersectionality of all of those things together. That
yes.
happen every single day. That we
Yes.
have to carry. That I don't think any other race of individuals does that
No.
as much as we do.
No.
And then get persecuted if we do it too much.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else is going to do it for us, but then we do it and we get persecuted. Damned
Right.
if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
You know, it's unfortunate. And it can bleed into relationships and how relationship triggers are formed. And saying some of this stuff was that where we are as black women sometimes, where do they come from? Some of the stuff we just said, you know, but if you're living in a situation where you have unresolved childhood trauma and then baggage from your previous partner.
What a lot of us do.
Yes,
A lot of us do.
Bag lady.
Bag lady, you gon' miss your butt.
You gonna miss your bus and hurt your back. We did a remix of 2 verses.
Yes.
You know, and then a huge one: trust issues, the lack of respect, being cheated on before, past relationships, and emotional detachment, all at once. All at once that you're having to deal with it. On top of the stuff that Zarifa just talked about. On top of that, and then show up at work and deal with all that shit. For some people,
And show up at work
and show up at work.
and get triggered all over again.
Exactly. And the cycle continues. And the cycle continues. And then there's also boundaries or lack of. If there's some boundaries you have, you may feel insecure. You may not feel safe. And then there's the unclear expectations of situationships. And you don't know what is going on. Like, there's no boundaries in situationships. And then you're unclear of the expectations. And then you feel some type of way because you're like, maybe there's some lack of respect because you don't know where you are in the relationship, but it's too early to ask. And you're like, well, what are we? And there's like, well, we're dating. But are we really, though? And how many people are you talking to? It can just go into so many different directions. And then looking at your past life experiences, there's unresolved conflicts. A big one, your critical inner voice, that self-talk is huge. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's huge because you're the main one listening to what you're saying.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people realize how impactful self-talk is, especially when you're self-deprecating. It's just because it just plays over and over and over in your head, and it just presents you to other people in a not so good light. Family trauma, and anything that comes with that. And we all know families have that, and trying to rationalize and struggle with how does that work can affect how you interact with anybody else to have a successful relationship.
Whew.
Right. And then the incompatible systems of belief. You add all
That's
of
a
these,
big one.
you add all those things there, and how you do things or how you don't do things, and how you see things, what's respect and what's not respect, and how you feel insecure or safe. And if those things are not aligned of what you believe with the person you're with, the relationship is just probably not going to be that successful. And then, of course, words. People always say, words don't hurt, but yes, they do. Sticks and stones.
They do hurt some people.
They do, right. Sticks and stones will break my
Words.
bones, but words will never hurt. The tongue
Words
is a
don't hurt
powerful
me.
weapon for some.
Words don't hurt me. I know for some people,
It's
words.
yes.
Words are very, very, very like triggering.
I think everybody has a trigger. And
Words are very, very triggering.
because and even if the words they say, it's like not how they say it, it's or not what they say, it's how it's said and the
Yes.
tonality of it. And you're like, I'm I'm sorry, are we having this conversation? And then it
Yes.
goes left, and then I think there was the one I saw this meme that once your girl starts laughing in the middle of an argument, she about to go to psycho mode. So you probably should leave
Yes,
because of
yes.
certain words that have been said, and now she's gone left because she's like, what, or who, who you think you talking to? You
Right.
know,
No,
yeah,
but in all like seriousness, words for some people are very triggering. Like you
yes,
can say something and people just are very sensitive, and it could be because they weren't talked to nicely when they were
mm-hmm,
younger, and so they were verbally abused. And so anytime you say anything that has a negative connotation to it,
yeah,
they or it not it like sometimes it doesn't even have to have a negative connotation. You could just say something and they just are triggered by it because somebody else said it to them, but they may have said it in a different tone, but it doesn't matter. It's just what you said. And so now
right,
words don't trigger me. Actions trigger me more than words.
mm,
Like you can say whatever to me and I'm just like whatever because I know I've learned and developed I don't want to say skin, but what I've learned is I can literally say anything, right? I can say that the moon is that the moon is made of cheese. I could say that the earth is flat. I could say that um uh Idris Elba is the president. I can say whatever I want. Like, you understand what I'm saying? That doesn't make it true. Words are
right,
not truth.
right,
So not always I can doctor and edit and do whatever. Like there's some stuff I'm going to edit out of this podcast cuz they're words, right?
right,
Your words. I don't get triggered by words. I get triggered by actions because actions mean you did it intentionally.
mm,
You had the intent in your brain to do what you just did. And that is what triggers me because there is no faking that. You
mm,
slap me, what you can't that ain't I know what just happened.
right,
You can't deny that. You hit me. You know
mm-hmm,
what I'm saying?
mm-hmm,
If you tell me you're gonna be someplace at 10 o'clock and you don't show up, you cannot deny that you didn't show up. Now
right,
you can have an excuse for it,
mm-hmm,
a justification,
right,
and that justification, depending on what it is, could negate the fact that you let me down.
right,
But actions speak louder than words to me because there is intent behind that action.
mm,
Yeah, there's intent behind words, but I know you're doing it you're saying it. I'm like, okay, but these are words. I can say whatever.
right, right,
You
right,
could say I'm ugly. I'm not, bitch. You could say whatever. You know what I'm saying? You could say whatever. It's more about your constitution.
right. And I think, but there's a lot of people that definitely struggle with that when it
Oh,
comes
absolutely.
to like the triggers of jealousy and envy.
Yeah.
And those words can come behind jealousy. Jealousy can come behind actions. Resentment can come behind words and actions. And
Mhm.
then there's the whole walking on eggshells, so you don't know what you can say because of the words that may be triggered, or you feel like you have to walk on eggshells so you don't get the wrath of somebody. You don't want to trigger your partner because now you got to walk on eggshells because now you don't know what you say could or could not trigger them, and
And that is a terrible place to be.
yeah,
If you have to walking on eggshells in a relationship is just not fun. It's just not fun because then you're always in a state of anxiety
yes,
because you don't know what it is that you could possibly do in that moment that's going to set that person off.
mm,
And that's abuse.
yeah.
Let's be clear, that's
And
abuse.
yes, and then with the word things, there's emotional abuse and verbal
Yeah.
abuse. So then
Mhm.
those situations, those of course can be triggers as well.
Right.
And the one big thing I forgot was financial issues, because that is a huge deal breaker for a lot of folks and
Mhm.
how they went about it. If someone stole their money, or someone isn't saving correctly, or they're spending too much, and those all things can be triggers for people because if you didn't have something and now you get into a situation where you do, and your spouse just kind of absconds off with your funds, you're a little wary of the next person. Like even with all these,
Mhm.
like the guy, I think there was a guy that just got arrested for a romance scam, and it was like 30 women that he was
Mm-hmm.
romancing and all got money. Now those women are always going to be now skeptical. I said I don't understand how these women be giving people money like that, but whatever. I just don't understand. You gave him $10,000 and you knew him a week. Okay, man. Wow. But it's just some folks interpret those things differently.
Right. And we've talked a lot about what triggers us and where triggers come from, but it's important to also understand how to deal and cope with triggers once you figured them out. Or, well, one of the things about how to cope with triggers is actually ask yourself, am I being triggered or I'm being overly sensitive? We live in a world where there's cancel culture and the quote unquote woke community, and people are too woke, and there are things that I've never understood to be offensive that are now offensive, and
Yeah.
really not offensive at all. You've taken a word out of a dictionary and now that word has greater meaning than what it was intended. Just things like
People
this
are
is just
bored.
I think so too. People pick and choose what they want to be woke about,
Yes.
and that is what is annoying to me. So ask yourself, are you being triggered or are you being overly sensitive, right? Because those are two different things. Then identify your triggers. What triggers you, right? I had to listen to myself, my body, and figure out what my triggers were, right? Because when I did start to understand that I was suffering from anxiety, I had to understand what was triggering for me. If I get overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm triggered, my anxiety kicks in. So I have to learn to kind of be, and that's why I'm a little bit more type A, because I have to be organized and well thought out, because I cannot be reactionary. I'm proactive, not reactive.
Right.
I cannot live in a state of reaction. It is chaotic to me, and that chaos brings on anxiety. That is a trigger for me. So I can never be reactive. It's not to say that I'm not able to react to situations that I'm not aware of,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like I wasn't previously aware of. I just can't live in a state of reaction all the time. I can't
Right.
wait for something to happen and then say, okay, that I'm going to react. I just can't do that. And it just and people who live that way, y'all like to live on the edge. And I don't. God bless you.
Not
God
my
bless
ministry,
you.
not my
It's not
ministry.
my ministry. I cannot do that. But you have to listen to your body, and when something happens, get in tune. Is your stomach start hurting? I know somebody who has stomach problems now, and their stomach problems, if something is something that's happening that's making them anxious, it triggers their gastrointestinal issues
Mm-hmm.
physically. I know people who get triggered by something, who something happens to them and it triggers back problems,
Yeah.
headaches, migraines.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You need to step back and look at the signs. Okay. My stomach is bothering me. What just happened? Okay, oh, I see. I just got a bill that I wasn't aware of. And that triggers me financially, because I remember how broke we were, and we were living from paycheck to paycheck, and my mom couldn't afford us to have new shoes, and I had to go to shoes with holes in them, and I got teased. You understand? You see how far that goes back? So you got triggered because a bill came that you didn't know, and now that takes you all the way back to the fact that you had holes in your sneakers when you were 5 years old and got
Right.
teased.
Triggers are.
Triggers are deep.
Very,
You have to
very.
again trace the root.
Yeah.
We're tracing the root. Go back. Okay, I am triggered by the smell of malt liquor. Why am I triggered by the smell of malt liquor when I don't drink malt liquor? Oh, I remember when my mother was in an abusive relationship and the man that she was with always drank malt liquor, and I remember that time that I was at home and he took the malt liquor and threw it in her face, and some of it got on me.
Right.
I mean, I know that that's a very intricate story, but that is how deep
That's how it happens.
that shit goes back.
That's how they form, because of those experiences that were traumatic at that time. It's like a snapshot of what just happened, and now it's forever developed in your head.
Yep.
Always. Yeah.
And unfortunately for some of us, we can't figure out what that trigger, what is that trigger. Like, we understand, well, we know what the trigger is, but we don't know
Where.
why we feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people when they have traumatic experiences, because there's so many angles to trauma, and it's so intricate and it affects people so differently, and their brain responds so differently. Sometimes they never know what triggers
Never.
them.
Let me tell you, I was watching this show, and this woman was deathly afraid of water. She did
Mm-hmm.
not like it, right? She could take a bath, well, she could take a shower and stuff like that, but she wouldn't go to the pool. She wouldn't go to the beach. She just could not do it. Like, she would cry, like physically be like, I can't do it. And she didn't know. Both of her parents were dead, had no idea what the issue was. Wound up getting in touch with a family friend. It was like, oh, yeah, you don't remember? When you were 5, you were at somebody's house and the kids were playing around and somebody pushed you into the pool and you almost drowned. She didn't know that. She didn't remember that.
I can
And
understand that.
she had buried that so deep, and her parents were gone, so she had no idea. Why can't I get it? And that was what it was.
Wow.
That is what it was. Can you imagine?
Mm. That's one thing that I think with relationships, when you're going in and meeting somebody, that's why to me, you're always meeting the representative, because a lot of times they don't even know that some of their behaviors. It's not an excuse, but some of their behaviors and how they interact with you are because their whole life they've been triggered and they really don't know how to cope, and then they're just projecting and acting out, unfortunately, to your detriment. But some of I don't think there's always intent behind some of their actions, because it's just automatic and ingrained, because they don't even know why they do what they do.
Yep.
Doesn't make it right, mind you,
But it's
the
there.
reality.
Right. And I think that like should lead you to be a little curious with yourself and curious with your partner. If you see that somebody is being triggered constantly, maybe help them just be. But I understand there's an apprehension, there's a fear there, because you don't want to dig up that, because you're
Right.
afraid. I don't want to know what that was. My mind and my body is
a protection
telling me
mechanism.
that there is a reason. I don't want to know what that reason is. Let's just be good with the fact that I'm being triggered and I just know not to deal with that.
Right.
But sometimes you have to know in order to overcome your fear, or overcome your trauma, or overcome your emotional state of uncomfortableness. Sometimes you have to get curious. And listen, sometimes that curiosity can come and play out in therapy, but therapy is not a cure-all. And we say this all the time. Therapy is not going. You're not going to go into therapy, have a couple sessions, and be cured from anything.
Part.
You're still going to be able to be triggered by a smell, a visual, a place. It may not be as intense.
Right.
It may not even be all the time. You may go 10 times without being triggered by that smell, and that 11th time will mess you up.
That is so true. That is so true. You can be in the same environment, and it'll be that one last straw.
Yep. And here's the thing. And when that happens, look around. What is going on in your life at that moment? Because you may have a weakened state in other areas. Your foundation may be weakened in other places, which will allow for that trigger to seep in. Right? It's possible. And not all trigger responses are going to make sense.
Right. You're just like, what the hell? Why
Right.
did this happen?
Like, it's not always going to make sense. Like, it's
And
just
that's
not.
okay if it doesn't make sense. Don't beat yourself up on it, but understand that can also happen.
Right.
And then you have to figure out, well, how am I going to deal with them? Just accept it and move on.
Right.
Or
And
try
so-
to go to therapy and figure it out.
Exactly. Hello, good morning. Right. And I would say, just as we close out this episode, just think about your own personal triggers, write them down. Kind of think about, how can I process these and get through these so that they don't have this negative impact on me. But also, instead of thinking of the negative ones, maybe write down some positive triggers that you have in your life. Some things that bring and evoke good memories. So that maybe if you smell like, let's say the smell of rose makes you, because it's a trigger of an abusive relationship. That person, after they abused you, they always bought you roses. And so the smell of roses triggers a negative, a response.
Right.
Then get some lilac. If you have a lilac memories. Like, oh, I remember when my daughter would pick lilacs for me every time she went outside. Then bring that in.
Or a home cooked meal. Or
Yes.
something that you smell like, I don't necessarily say that it was an appetizing spell, but we were at Pitt and you could just smell the O. It was just like a red, like you walk by. You know what I mean? It wasn't a bad one. It's just like, oh, we're out near the O. And just fries and the pizza, and that was a happy memory for us.
Yes, if I smell that, if I smell that, it will trigger good memories from Pitt.
Right. Exactly.
So
stuff like that.
And you have to just think about that, or like you say, if you have one negative trigger something, use something that's going to be positive. Maybe there's a song that you listen to that brings you back to happy moments. So as soon as something negatively triggers you, trigger yourself positively. Just try to help yourself and balance it out. And then also be mindful that there are people in your lives who also have triggers, and try to not trigger them, and not in an abusive way, because again, like, there's levels to that. But just be mindful of the fact that we all come to our relationships with unresolved issues and baggage. A lot of us do. Many of us do. And hopefully you're in a very equitable partnership that allows for you to be vulnerable and allows them to be vulnerable, and you can lean and help each other. Right. And so with that, we're going to go to a quick break and come back with our last sip of the day. And we are back. This is the last sip of tea with your Hood Dalai Lama, and I am your Hood Dalai Lama. The people who trigger us to feel negative emotions are messengers. They are messengers for the unhealed parts of our being, and that is attributed to Teal Swan. And like I said, sometimes there are negative emotions that come, and sometimes they come by the way of others. Sometimes they come by the way of smells, sounds, tastes. But just know that those messengers, whatever they are, if they come in the physical sense, or if they come in the sense of our sensory, that this is just telling us there's an unhealed part of ourselves, and maybe we need to peel back those layers and figure out how we can go about healing.
Right.
And that's the last sip of tea with your Hood Dalai Lama.
Thank you for joining us this week on Sippin' Tea with Nat and Z. You can follow us on Instagram at sippintea_NatNZ_pod, and on Facebook at sippintea_NatNZ. To get info on upcoming podcasts, topics, guests, and news. Thanks for listening, and catch us next episode where we get into trauma.